president wanted this prime minister in power so badly.
Mr. Speaker, we have the best deal in the world with the Americans. First,
Parliament was never quiet that day. The air inside the House of Commons felt like static before a storm, heavy, charged, and waiting to explode. Across the aisle, the Prime Minister sat stiffly, his notes stacked neatly, his jaw clenched. He knew what was coming. Everyone did. The numbers were out, 86,000 jobs gone, billions in investment gone south of the border, and the opposition smelled blood. The leader of the opposition rose slowly, with that mix of anger and disbelief Canadians had come to recognize. Prime Minister, he began, voice echoing through the chamber, how do you explain losing tens of thousands of Canadian jobs and billions of dollars, while standing there, claiming you have the best deal in the world? Murmurs broke across the floor. Some MPs leaned back, others leaned in. The moment felt historic. He continued, you promised Canadians a stronger economy, more opportunities, and a better deal with our allies. But what we see today is a Canada bleeding investment, while you brag about sending $1 trillion of Canadian capital to the United States. Tell me, Prime Minister, what exactly do Canadians get in return for all that money and all those lost jobs? The cameras zoomed in. The Prime Minister adjusted his tie, took a deep breath, and began to speak. His tone was calm, too calm, some thought. Mr. Speaker, this government has always stood up for Canadian workers. The economic shifts we're seeing are part of a global realignment. Our trade deal with the United States remains one of the strongest on earth. And yes, we are negotiating improvements to ensure our industries, our workers, and our future are protected. He paused, looking directly across the aisle. That's why we've committed over $5 billion in strategic response funding, and another $10 billion for retraining and liquidity support. We're investing in people, not politics.
Before moving forward, do subscribe for Parliament updates.
But the opposition benches erupted. One MP shouted, investing in Americans, you mean? Another slammed his desk, our auto plants are shutting down. Our steel is piling up in warehouses. You call that protecting Canadians? The Prime Minister's allies tried to drown them out with applause, but the chaos was unstoppable. Because beneath all the shouting, one truth hung over the chamber like smoke: Canada was losing ground. The auto sector, once the pride of Ontario, was shrinking fast. Tariffs were biting harder. Companies that once built cars in Windsor and Oshawa were now packing up for Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee. American governors were bragging about Canadian investment surges, while Canadian workers were staring at pink slips. And the opposition knew exactly how to weaponize it. 86,000 jobs gone, the leader repeated, pounding his desk for emphasis. That's not a global shift, Prime Minister, that's your failure. You taxed, regulated, and negotiated our economy into a corner. You told us to trust your deal. Well, look around, the deal's killing us. The gallery erupted again. Even those on the government side looked uneasy. Some shuffled their papers, others avoided eye contact. The tension wasn't just political, it was existential. Because the truth no one wanted to say aloud was simple: Canada's economy was shrinking faster than any other in the G7. And yet, in the face of these grim numbers, the Prime Minister doubled down. We are in constant communication with our American counterparts, he said firmly. Our cooperation in steel, aluminum, and energy sectors is stronger than ever. These are complex, evolving negotiations, and we are not going to abandon Canada's future for cheap political points. But the opposition wouldn't let up. You talk about cooperation, another MP snapped, but what about sovereignty? Every time the US raises tariffs, you roll over. You call it partnership, we call it surrender.
Well, we now know why the US president wanted this prime minister in power so badly, a weak leader whose high taxes and anti-development laws are sending billions of dollars and thousands of jobs out of this country. 86,000 jobs lost. And yesterday, the prime minister promised the president that he would increase Canadian investment in the U.S. by $1 trillion if he gets the agreement that he expects to get. Mr. Speaker, in exchange for $1 trillion of job losses in Canada, will he at least get an end to the U.S. auto tariffs that are killing jobs for our workers in Ontario?
That line hit hard. Even the press gallery shifted in their seats. The Prime Minister tried to respond, but it was too late. The opposition benches had found their rhythm, and now the debate turned from economics to character. "You said you'd go down to Washington and give them elbows," the opposition leader shouted, voice rising with each word. "Instead, you went down and gave them handshakes, while they took our factories, our jobs, and our investments. Where are those elbows now, Prime Minister?" The chamber roared. The Speaker tried to restore order, banging the gavel, but no one was listening. The room had turned into a battlefield, a raw, political war zone where every shout, every glare, and every soundbite was crafted for the evening news. And in that chaos, the cameras caught it, a flicker of something across the Prime Minister's face. Maybe frustration. Maybe doubt. Or maybe the weight of knowing that every promise he made was now being measured in lost paychecks and shuttered plants. Because this wasn't just another debate, it was a reckoning. Canada was standing at a crossroads, one path leading deeper into economic uncertainty, the other demanding a complete rethink of how the nation deals with its most powerful ally. And for millions of Canadians watching at home, one question began to echo louder than any speech in Parliament. Has our government already traded away Canada's future? The Speaker's gavel struck 3 times before the noise even began to fade. But by then, the damage was done. The Prime Minister's polished composure was slipping, and the opposition could smell weakness. The cameras zoomed in again, close enough to catch every twitch of his jaw, every nervous glance at the briefing notes that suddenly didn't seem to help. Then came the voice that would define the afternoon. A Conservative MP from Ontario, voice trembling with anger, rose from her seat. "Mr. Speaker," she began, "in my riding, hundreds of auto workers just lost their jobs last week. Their plants are silent. Their future's uncertain. And the Prime Minister stands here talking about strategic funds and market forces. These people don't need talking points, they need hope." Applause erupted from the opposition benches. Even a few hesitant claps came from the government side. The Prime Minister stayed silent, eyes locked on his notes. The MP continued, voice now breaking, "You told us this deal with the U.S. would protect our industries. Instead, our steel is rusting, our aluminum sits unsold, and our small towns are dying. You call this leadership?" The silence that followed was heavier than any applause. The Prime Minister finally rose. His tone sharpened, part defense, part desperation. "Mr. Speaker, I will not apologize for putting Canadian workers first. Every investment we make, every negotiation we lead, is designed to secure long-term stability. We cannot build walls or close our borders. We must adapt, compete, and lead." But the words didn't land. Someone from the back shouted, "You're not leading, you're following Washington's orders." The chamber exploded again. Laughter, jeers, outrage, it was chaos. And then came the moment that changed the tone completely. The opposition leader stood up again, slowly, letting the noise die out before speaking. He didn't shout this time. He spoke quietly, which made it worse. "Mr. Speaker, Canadians don't need another lecture. They need leadership. While this Prime Minister sends Canadian money and opportunity south, the United States celebrates record growth. Do you know what they call it in Michigan now? The Great Northern Bonus. That's what they call Canadian investment flowing into their economy. They thank him for his generosity."
Mr. Speaker, we have the best deal in the world with the Americans. First point. Second point, the President of the United States and myself had a meeting of minds yesterday with respect to the future of the steel sector, the aluminum sector, the energy sector in cooperation, which is why our teams are negotiating the terms of those deals. And we are working, as the President himself said in the Oval Office, on the modalities of an auto agreement.
The room went silent. The sarcasm hit like a hammer. And for a moment, just one, the Prime Minister's confident mask cracked. He leaned forward, gripping the desk, speaking through clenched teeth. Canadians know who's really standing for them. While you play politics, we're delivering results, stronger trade, cleaner energy, and secure jobs. That's what leadership looks like. But even his own MPs seemed unconvinced. The word results hung in the air, tainted by the reality outside Parliament Hill. Factories gone. Investment drained. A currency sliding. A public growing restless. The opposition seized the moment. Stronger trade, the leader mocked. You've presided over the fastest shrinking economy in the G7. You talk about clean energy while the Americans ramp up production. You talk about secure jobs while 86,000 Canadians are out of work. What world are you living in? Every word hit like a bullet. The Prime Minister tried to fire back, but for every promise he mentioned, the opposition had a counter. He said strategic fund, they said corporate bailout. He said private sector confidence, they said mass exodus. He said future growth, they said current collapse. It was no longer a debate. It was an unraveling. Outside the House, Canadians were already watching the clips explode online, the heated exchanges, the cutaway shots, the anger on both sides. Hashtags trended within minutes. Hashtag 86,000. Hashtag the deal that failed. Hashtag where are the elbows? And yet, deep inside the chamber, amid all the shouting and fury, the true battle wasn't between parties. It was between two visions of what Canada should be. One, the government's vision, insisted on compromise, partnership, and adaptation in a changing global market. The other, the opposition's, demanded defiance, sovereignty, and economic independence from American dominance. It wasn't just economics. It was identity. Was Canada to be a bold, self-reliant nation, or a quiet satellite orbiting Washington's economic gravity? The Prime Minister straightened his papers again, his voice quieter now. Mr. Speaker, we cannot let fear dictate our policies. The private sector makes investment decisions, not politicians. Our job is to create conditions for success, not to dictate where companies spend. But that line, meant to sound responsible, only gave the opposition more fire. Oh, so now it's not your responsibility, a voice rang out. You take credit when jobs are created, but you blame the private sector when they're lost. Which is it, Prime Minister? Laughter. Applause. Chaos again. The Prime Minister's allies looked uneasy. Every answer seemed to dig the hole deeper. Every defense sounded rehearsed. And as the Speaker once again called for order, one truth became clear to everyone watching, from the back rows of Parliament to the living rooms across Canada. This wasn't just a debate about trade anymore. It was about trust. Trust in leadership. Trust in direction. Trust that someone, somewhere, still had a plan to stop the bleeding. And as the clock hit noon, and the session adjourned for the day, reporters swarmed the hallways, MPs dodged questions, and Canadians, scrolling through headlines, felt that uneasy chill of realization. The storm wasn't over. It was only beginning. By the next morning, Ottawa was burning, not in flames but in fury. The clips from Parliament had gone viral. Millions watched as the Prime Minister was cornered, out, and visibly shaken. Every news outlet ran the same headline, Canada's confidence crisis. At coffee shops in Toronto, refineries in Alberta, and factories in Windsor, people asked the same question: what happened to us? How did a country that once built cars, planes, and dreams now depend on someone else's permission to grow? The Prime Minister faced the cameras that evening, standing in front of the maple leaf. His tone was measured, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. "We are a resilient nation," he said. "Canada has faced challenges before, and we will overcome this one too. Our trade relationships remain strong, and our focus remains on Canadian workers." But outside that polished studio, the narrative had already shifted. The opposition leader seized the microphone at a rally that night. "Canadians don't need speeches, they need jobs. They don't want promises, they want a plan. This government didn't lose 86,000 jobs by accident. They lost them by choice. And it's time they paid for it." The crowd roared. What began as a policy debate had now become a national confrontation, a test of who would define Canada's future. Was it the cautious globalist who believed in patience and diplomacy? Or the populist challenger who promised to fight, tooth and nail, for every Canadian factory and every lost job? For ordinary Canadians, the slogans no longer mattered. Their mortgages did. Their paychecks did. Their belief that their leaders could protect them, that mattered most of all. And so, as Parliament prepared to reconvene the following week, one truth settled like a shadow over the capital. The political storm wasn't about to end. It was about to transform into an election, into a movement, into a battle for the soul of the nation itself. Because somewhere between trade deals and press conferences, Canada had reached a breaking point. And from that point forward, every debate, every handshake, every promise, would carry the weight of one haunting question. Who's really fighting for Canada?
Canada debates.